Welcome to Instrument of Power. This week, the president's absolute top legislative priority, the Save America Act, just died on the Senate floor. Yet almost on that exact same day, an entire federal law enforcement agency had its funding explicitly tied to his personal time in office.
Right? It's a massive contradiction.
Exactly. So what are we actually looking at here? Are we a nation of, load-bearing laws, or a nation governed by one man's timeline? We are applying our foundational lens today.
Yeah, tracking that 800-year constitutional lineage from the Magna Carta to the U.S. Constitution.
Right, to ask our core analytical question. Is American governmental power currently being governed by a system, or is it concentrated in a personality?
It really is a defining tension of the moment. I mean, we're watching a real-time stress test of the republic. And the evidence coming out of Washington is deeply contradictory, depending on where you look.
Well, that brings us to where we stand on the health of these systems. And my position is that the guardrails are holding. The system's structural checks and balances are actively containing executive ambition.
Yeah, and my position is that the system is taking on water, fast. The state's mechanisms are being bypassed and, frankly, fundamentally rewritten to serve one man's timeline, cultural preferences, and political intimidation.
Let's start with the mechanisms of friction, then. Because a lot of people see legislative gridlock and they just automatically assume the system is failing.
Right. They just see the mess.
Exactly. But I see it as a governor on an engine. A governor's job is to prevent a machine from revving past the red line and destroying itself.
Okay, but...
And that is exactly what the Senate did by rejecting the Save America Act. The executive demanded it, pushed for it, and the structure just absorbed the pressure and said no.
Sure, the SAVE Act failed, but you can't just point to standard legislative hurdles in a polarized Congress and declare the republic secure. You really have to look at how actual power is being applied, behind the scenes.
What do you mean by behind the scenes?
Well, consider the ICE funding bill Senate Republicans are advancing right now. This isn't a standard appropriations bill tied to a fiscal cycle. It is explicitly designed to last, quote, through the end of Trump's term.
Tying it to the administration's exact timeline.
Precisely. By tying agency funding directly to a president's specific time in office, you fundamentally alter the incentive structure of that agency. They no longer serve the state, they serve the timeline of the CEO. It operates like a personal subscription service rather than a public utility.
I don't disagree that the rhetoric around it is highly personalized, but the broader legislative momentum tells a completely different story.
How so?
The system is systematically neutralizing personality-driven policy. Look at Republican Congressman Brian Fitzpatrick joining Democrats along with 3 other Republicans to vote to end the war in Iran.
Well, by voting to reclaim war powers, this bipartisan coalition is using the structural mechanism of the Constitution to physically pull the steering wheel away from the executive branch. That is a systemic override of a political personality. But the personality is actively rewriting the rules of the agencies, while Congress debates those war powers. Take Secretary of State Marco Rubio's admission to lawmakers just this week.
The refugee program?
Yes. He stated the administration stopped general refugee admissions, specifically to create a new program for white South Africans, claiming they, quote, assimilate easier. Think about the mechanics of that.
It's definitely a controversial shift.
It's more than a shift. The state is abandoning a systemic, equal protection-based approach to immigration in favor of a specialized track based entirely on personal, cultural, and ideological grievance. When state power is tailored to an individual's specific cultural worldview, you aren't looking at a system anymore. You're looking at a fiefdom.
Okay, but if he is successfully building a fiefdom, then why is the administration constantly forced to retreat?
Retreat?
Yeah. Steve Inskeep's recent interview with Jonah Goldberg highlighted exactly this. The president's political controversies are creating immense drag on his own agenda. Scott Detrow and Ann Applebaum both pointed out that the administration backed down on several of its executive actions this week because of institutional pushback.
Right, but...
So the machine is forcing the operator to compromise. If power is truly concentrated in this personality, why are they forced to retreat in the face of institutional pressure?
Well, backing down temporarily doesn't mean the system is healthy. It just means the executive is calculating the immediate political cost. The core issue is that true systemic power requires an adherence to objective reality and data.
I completely agree with that.
Right, but we are seeing a total override of data in favor of optics. The appearance of the strongman. Look at the National Guard deployment in Washington, D.C. They've been deployed since last August.
Right. And a new study just proved that their presence has had zero effect on reducing violent crime. None. And yet, their numbers are set to double. Why? Because the optics of force serve the personality even when the data dictates a totally different deployment of state resources.
Okay, but if this administration is purely driven by optics and strongman appearances, like you say, then why are they utterly failing to control their own narrative in the press?
I wouldn't say they're failing.
I mean, the fact that we are even talking about that study proves my point. The media is actively dismantling that strongman image, which proves the Fourth Estate's accountability mechanisms are working perfectly.
They are working in spite of a coordinated effort to break them through personalized intimidation. A healthy system requires an independent press, but look at the tactics being used.
You mean the rhetoric against reporters?
More than rhetoric. The president told CNN's Caitlin Collins she had, quote, hatred in her eyes, continuing this well-documented pattern of targeting women reporters who challenge him. And this behavior trickles down the institutional ladder.
Well, politicians clashing with the press isn't exactly new.
Not like this. Former Congressman George Santos made violent threats and blatantly lied after an NPR reporter uncovered federal investigations into his bets on the prediction market Kalshi. The tactic isn't to dispute facts through systemic channels. It is to threaten the individual holding the system accountable.
Wait, but isn't the very existence of those reports proof that your argument is actually wrong?
How so?
If intimidation was actually working, NPR wouldn't have published the Kalshi piece at all. CNN wouldn't have broadcast the Caitlin Collins exchange and analyzed it for millions of viewers.
Yeah, but
The system absorbed the intimidation, ignored the threats, and performed its constitutional duty anyway. The journalists didn't flinch.
it proves the resilience of individual reporters, yes. I'll give you that. But over time, the normalization of intimidation erodes the foundation itself. We have a really bad habit in American politics of institutionalizing personalities.
What do you mean by institutionalizing?
Just look at the impending opening of the Obama Presidential Center in Chicago. We literally build physical monuments to the charisma of our executives.
Okay, but a presidential center is a historical retrospective. It's a library. It doesn't write laws or enforce borders. What you're getting at?
Right. When you tailor ICE funding to one man's exact term or filter refugee policy through his specific cultural preferences, you are turning the active living government into an extension of his personal brand.
It's a sharp analogy, I'll admit. But I have to return to the hard structural reality. Yes, the rhetoric is abrasive and the political styles are incredibly combative.
Very.
But when we look at the actual outcomes this week, the failure of the Save America Act, the bipartisan votes to reclaim war powers, the fact that complex statecraft like the Israel-Lebanon ceasefire is still functioning through traditional diplomatic channels.
Right.
All of that shows that the machinery of state is still doing the heavy lifting. The system is successfully containing and managing the power.
Well, my conclusion remains that we are ignoring the structural rot beneath the surface.
Go on.
When the executive branch implements tailored refugee programs based on perceived assimilation, ties law enforcement funding to a specific administration's lifespan, and normalizes direct threats against the press meant to ensure transparency, well, personality is steadily eroding those institutional guardrails.
I think we can certainly agree that this tension between a charismatic, ambitious executive and a rigid, slow-moving constitutional system is the defining struggle of modern American governance.
Without a doubt.
It requires relentless scrutiny from the citizenry. Because just as you don't stop inspecting an engine once it's running, you don't stop testing the stress points of a republic.
Power understood. Power governed. Power preserved.